The house was glowing with decorations when I arrived, blue balloons tied to every chair, tiny paper crowns scattered across the table, and a giant banner reading Happy 6th Birthday, Ian. I had spent the night before carefully wrapping my grandson's presents, choosing each one the way only a grandmother knows how. I walked in with a smile, believing it would be a beautiful family day, but the warmth I expected never came. My daughter-in-law, Elena, barely looked at me. Her voice was clipped when she greeted me, as if my presence were an inconvenience rather than a contribution. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was stressed from organizing the party, I told myself. I helped tie balloons, set up chairs, and arrange the gift table. Every time I tried to help, she would sigh loudly or take the task from my hand, as if I were too old to do it properly. Still, I stayed quiet. It was Ian's special day, and I didn't want tension anywhere near his happiness. Finally, the moment arrived, cake cutting. The room filled with cheers as Ian blew out the candles with all the innocence of childhood. Elena quickly took charge, slicing the cake neatly, placing each piece on bright blue paper plates. Her movements were graceful, rehearsed even. She served her parents first, then her siblings, then the neighbors, and even the children from Ian's school. I waited patiently. She moved around the room again, handing out slices with a practiced smile. She passed right in front of me. Our eyes met for a brief second. There was no confusion in her gaze, no forgetfulness, just cold, deliberate intention. She skipped me, my heart tightened, but I sat quietly. Maybe she would notice on her second round. She didn't. The humiliation soaked into my bones like a slow poison. Everyone around me was laughing, eating, celebrating, while I sat with empty hands, pretending not to notice the whispers. My son glanced at me once, guilt flashed in his eyes, but he said nothing. His silence hurt almost as much as her cruelty. Then Ian looked up at me with frosting smeared across his cheek and asked, "Daddy, where's your cake?" I forced a smile. "I'll have some later, Beta," but my chest felt hollow. I knew I wouldn't stay long enough to eat anything now. I left the room quietly, blaming a sudden headache. But what really hurt was the truth echoing inside me. My daughter-in-law wanted to erase me from their world, and today, she found the cruelest way to show it. The morning after the birthday party, my house felt colder than usual. Maybe it was silenced, or maybe it was the heaviness that had settled inside me. I couldn't forget the moment Elena walked past me with that tray of cake. Her smile sweetened for everyone, but sharpened for me. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a moment of forgetfulness, it was a message I had been ignoring for months. As I sat with my tea, memories arose like bitter steam, small incidents I had brushed aside. The time she said, "We prefer modern grandparents," when I wore traditional clothes. The moment she told my son that I interfere too much, simply because I reminded him to take medicine. The time she arranged outings and told me last, making it impossible for me to join. Little cuts, little humiliations. I kept stitching those wounds with patience, believing peace was more important than pride. But yesterday she ripped them open. In the afternoon, my neighbor Nasreen came over. She had attended the party briefly and seemed hesitant to speak, but her eyes softened with sympathy. "Abba, can I tell you something? I overheard Alina talking to her friend at the party. She was laughing about you, saying you act dramatic for attention. I didn't want to hurt you, but you deserved to know." I felt the air leave my lungs, so it wasn't just disrespect, it was mockery. Then she said something that struck me harder than anything else. She said she didn't want you stealing Ian's attention, that you're too involved. In my grandson's life, the child who ran into my arms every time he saw me, the ache settled deeper. Later, while tidying the table, I accidentally knocked down Alina's purse. A neatly folded invitation card slipped out, the same themed birthday invitation she had claimed she forgot to send me. But this one had my name on it. She didn't forget, she hid it. That's when everything clicked into place, the sudden coldness, her irritation when my son hugged me, the way she redirected conversations away from me. She didn't want me there. Not in their home, not in their celebrations, not in their life. For the first time, anger simmered inside me, not wild, but calm and clear, like a fire that knew exactly what it wanted to burn. I realized something important that day. Alina wasn't trying to distance me. She was trying to erase me. But she had no idea who I truly was, and she had no idea what a quiet mother could do when pushed too far. Revenge was never something I thought I was capable of. I had spent my entire life believing in patience, in tolerance, in quiet dignity. But there is a moment when silence stops being strength and becomes permission. Alina mistook my silence for weakness, so I began a different kind of response, not with loud accusations, not with drama, but with calm precision. The kind of revenge that doesn't scream, it simply reveals. The first step came unexpectedly. A week after the birthday incident, my son called to tell me he was disappointed about not getting a job he had been dreaming of. He told me he never received a call for the final interview. The company had said they tried reaching him but got no response. Something felt wrong. Later that evening, I met an old acquaintance, Mr. Curran, who worked in senior management at the same firm. When I casually mentioned my son's application, he told me something shocking. He was shortlisted. We sent him the date through email. I felt a cold shiver. My son never mentioned any email. And then I remembered Alina handled all bills, emails, and messages. She claimed it was more organized that way. But suddenly, it looked more like control than responsibility. Without accusing anyone, I politely asked Mr. Curran if he could review the situation. He did, and 2 days later, my son received a call for a second chance interview. When he got the job, he rushed to my house with tears in his eyes, hugging me tightly. "Amy, I don't know how this happened, but thank you." Behind him, Alina stood stiff, her smile forced, her eyes unsettled. She knew something had slipped from her hands. But I wasn't finished. I invited the whole family, including Alina's parents, for dinner. I cooked every dish Alina proudly claimed she made best. When everyone sat down, I praised Alina sweetly. Whatever confidence I have in hosting comes from watching Alina. She is so talented. The table fell silent. Everyone knew the truth. Alina had refused to help with my hosting for months. My words, though gentle, exposed her rudeness without me pointing a single finger. Her mother looked at her with confusion. Her sister raised an eyebrow. My son's head lowered, realization slowly settling in. And Alina, she was trapped in her own reflection. I didn't need to insult her. She was unveiling her own behavior with every reaction. My revenge wasn't cruelty. It was clarity, and clarity is something people fear more than punishment. But the final reckoning that was still to come. Days passed, but the tension around Alina grew thicker. She walked around the house with forced politeness, as if she sensed that the ground beneath her was slowly cracking. My quiet revenge had done its work, not by hurting her, but by allowing the truth to breathe, and truth, once given space, becomes impossible to hide. One evening I received a call from my son. His voice was tight, trembling slightly. "Amy, can I come over?" When he arrived, he looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work, but from the weight of painful discovery. He sat down and buried his face in his hands. I saw her messages. He finally said, "All those times you said something felt wrong, you were right." I stayed silent, letting him speak. He told me he had gone through Alina's phone while she was in the shower, something he never imagined doing, but something he felt he needed to do after witnessing her strange behavior at dinner. What he found stunned him, messages to her friends mocking me, laughing about the birthday insult, calling me clingy, old-fashioned, and in the way, even bragging about not giving me cake on purpose. Then came the voice note, the one that made him freeze. I didn't want her to enjoy the party. She needs to learn she's not the center of everything. No cake for the queen today. The pain in my son's eyes told me how deeply her cruelty cut him. He looked up at me, tears threatening to fall. "Amy, I'm so sorry. I should have seen this before. I let her make me blind." I placed my hand on his. "Beta, you saw it when you were ready. That is enough." The next day, Alina came to my house with trembling hands and swollen eyes. She wasn't angry anymore, she was afraid. She didn't come to fight. She came to face the consequences of her own actions. She stood in my living room, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything." But it wasn't remorse I heard. It was fear of losing control. I looked at her steadily, my voice calm. I don't need your apology, Alina. I only need your respect, not for me, but for the family you married into. Her eyes widened. I had not insulted her, not shamed her, but placed responsibility back on her shoulders. And that hurt more than any anger would have. Since that day, something changed. The way she addressed me, the way she behaved in the home, the way she realized I wasn't her competition. I was the foundation of the very family she wanted to control. Weeks later, during a small gathering, Ian came running with a plate. "Daddy, this cake is for you, first piece." As he placed it in my hands, I felt the softest, sweetest kind of victory. Not revenge born of hatred, but justice served with dignity.